Hello everyone, Emily here again today, and I was thinking about doing a whole spooky Halloween video, but it hasn't happened. I didn't really know what Halloween theme topic I could really talk about, but maybe I'll do one of those this week because it's still sort of Halloween week to me, but maybe not. But what I did want to talk to you guys about today was something I sort of have hinted on in the past about wanting to talk to you about, which is about how our system looks and might present differently to other people with DID. It's sort of why we sort of are a bit different, I suppose. I've recently joined a subreddit called r/DID or something like that, and looking at a lot of different people's experiences and how they're similar and also how they're different from mine has been quite a really nice experience for us. We've had support on there, and it's a really good community, so that's been really lovely, and it's always a positive to meet like-minded people or people that are going through something similar to you, so that's been really nice. But something that we've all noticed is how we've developed and gotten to a place where we have functional multiplicity, which is where literally what it says, we function as a multiple. So the thing that we find sort of difficult to get our head around is DID is a disorder, which means, usually if you're going to speak to a doctor or something about something, it needs to be negatively impacting your life in some way. And with our functional multiplicity, our DID doesn't massively negatively impact our life on a daily basis. It still comes with negatives, but it's not as hard-hitting or as obvious as perhaps other people with DID it might be. I hope that makes sense. So what I mean is that we, in the Myriad system, we've gotten to a point where we communicate really well, and that's a massive, important point that other systems have not got yet. And this is not, the way I'm saying this, I don't want it to come across that functional multiplicity, makes me better. It doesn't. It means I'm very lucky, incredibly lucky, and that I have been able to work with my alters and create a sort of communication. It takes time and can be very, very difficult. And for a lot of people with DID, it can be very, very difficult. The other thing that I also wanted to sort of clarify is the amnesia side of things. So just in case anybody has come on my channel and seen my videos but doesn't know much about DID, I thought I would briefly sort of explain what the more norm is, I suppose. So the usual presentation of DID and what is sort of the criteria for diagnosis is amnesia, and that can be very dramatic, or a lot less. So for us, our amnesia is very lessened by the fact that we share everything together. So that really helps us. So to other people, they might wake up somewhere and not know how they got there because one of their alters has taken them there. They might speak to a friend, and their friend might be upset with them and cross with them, and they might not know why, and it could be because one of their alters has said something to them. And that is a real reality for a lot of people with DID, that they just don't know what their alter has done while they've been out. And I want to sort of bring awareness to this, because although our DID is fairly light-hearted, DID is a massively impactful disorder for a lot of people. And imagine yourself waking up and not knowing exactly what you did yesterday. The other side of amnesia is not knowing that you have alters, and not knowing that it's a possibility for somebody to do something that you don't know you've done. So imagine, like I said, speaking to your friend and they're suddenly angry with you for what you said last night. You don't remember what you said last night because it was an alter, but you don't know that you have alters. So a lot of things like that can be very troubling and upsetting to somebody with DID. Another issue that comes with the communication is an alter not being sort of on your side. So a lot of systems, and ours sort of included, we have a main, and the alters, and especially in our system, know that the things that happen in my life are sort of the main things. But we always try and make everybody as happy as possible anyway. For example, how Pepper's dating, and they all have experiences, they all have time out. But it's my name on all the documents and things like that. With some systems, it's not as simple as that, because of course, if you imagine you're an individual and you're trapped inside somebody else's body, you could get very angry and frustrated. You could turn quite hostile to that person that's trying to hold you back or trying to get rid of you. So hostile alters is a real thing for a lot of people with DID. And again, these are all things I just wanted to do a short video about, because the reality for a lot of people suffering with DID is it's a very painful disorder, with a lot of depression most of the time. I think DID almost always comes with depression and anxiety, often PTSD and other things like that. So it's all, I just don't want people to see my channel and think that this is how everybody with DID is. And I always try and present that it's always my perspective on things. But it's just very eye-opening again to join these communities and see how many people are struggling. And again, with the media portraying people with DID as dangerous, the most danger somebody with DID is going to have is to themselves, because with not knowing things, with amnesia, with having hostile alters, all of these things can really take a massive toll on you, and your depression can get rather bad. And a lot of people are suffering with that, and it's not a very well-known disorder. So a lot of, it's difficult to find therapy and support. It's difficult to find people who understand DID, even, within the mental health community. I'm just going to take these off because I can just see the reflection. It's bothering me. So I had to go private, and I had to also find a dissociative disorders clinic that specialised in dissociative disorders, in order to get somebody who knew what they were talking about to see us. And that cost me. So it's not something that I think is particularly easy to do through the NHS, for example. So it's just, I sort of started getting a bit sort of disheartened and sad by the amount of people that do have DID, because it's not a small number. There are a lot of people with DID that are really struggling, and I want my channel to be raising awareness and showing that DID is something you can get on with, and you're not like mental, and you're just a person with lots of other people. So it's important to me that, I guess, people that aren't me are spoken for, if that makes sense. Because there isn't much support out there for these people. So the only other way that I also want to discuss that I'm different is with remembering trauma and having PTSD. I don't believe that anybody here has PTSD. It could be that I don't know yet, because again, alters can hide traumatic events from you. It's kind of one of their purposes, but it's not something that I've ever known about. And another side effect of having DID for a lot of people is intense PTSD. And that's really hard. I mean, PTSD is hard enough in and of itself. And then you have all these other things going on with alters that might not like communicating with you or might not like sharing, losing memories and not knowing what you've done. All of these things can be really hard. And I kind of wish there was more support out there and that DID was more well known. For us, one of our biggest things that we'd like to see changed is if more people knew about DID, then more people could, interact with a system as a whole rather than just one individual. If it was easy to say, oh, I have DID, we're multiples, for people to understand what that means and be able to say, well, who am I talking to? Because that would be so comforting and safe feeling for all the alters involved in the system. Obviously that's a bit of a far-fetched sort of idea, it's not reality, but if there was just more funding for, dissociative clinics, it would just be good if there was more out there for people with DID. It's very, very, very difficult to, one, get a diagnosis, and two, get any kind of therapy, which is something that we're trying to do and is proving to be very difficult and slow. But I don't want to also put DID on a pedestal above other disorders or other, mental health or physical health issues, because, the NHS is struggling anyway, and it takes a long time for anything to get done. So it's just another area that needs to be looked at, really. So, yeah. Basically, I think that obviously there's a lot of disorders and disabilities that deserve more research and attention and funding and support. But just because I happen to have DID, that's one that I think, I can empathise very strongly with people who suffer with DID, and it can be really difficult to navigate through life if you have intense amnesia, you don't communicate very well with all of your alters, and if you're struggling with PTSD, depression, anxiety, it's so much to deal with. There's so many situations in life that we take for granted as being fairly straightforward. For example, being intimate with your partner and being afraid that you might switch, or another alter might show up, or just being in a shopping centre or at the supermarket and being nervous that a little might, come forwards and things like that. A lot of things in life that people with DID have to navigate and struggle with. And if any of you who are watching do have DID, I just want you to know you're not alone. A lot of people are going through the same thing, and there are a lot of people who are here to support you and help you. The r/DID subreddit is a really nice place, but it's not a place for people who don't have DID to go. It's not a place for people to go and just ask questions about, do you do this with DID? If you have any questions, ask me. Put them in my comment section, please. And I would love to engage with people who would like to understand more about DID and have any questions. But that subreddit is for people with DID. I just wanted to put that in there in case you are somebody with DID and wants a support network. But yeah, I mean, I didn't want it to be too depressing a video, but I do want to remind everyone that although my channel is fairly light on the sort of heavy side of DID, if that makes any sense. You can tell I don't script these videos, but basically to remind people that DID is not just all fun and games for most people. We're really, really lucky in that we have functional multiplicity, that we are able to we imagine ourselves as almost a family, we're a unit, we work together, even though some of us are quite begrudging of that. For example, Charlie, we all support each other, and we're very, very lucky for that. And we're also really lucky for the situation that we're in with our partners, but a lot of people don't have that support, and I want to remind people of that. And if you ever do hear anybody have DID, or if anybody, comes to you and tells you that they have DID, that you guys can be a bit more aware and switched on to how difficult it can be for people. Editing, Emily here. I was just watching it through and realised that I'm just talking about functional multiplicity, and I haven't really explained how I got to that point. Basically, I was on the subreddit and I was talking about how we worry. It's a common thing for us in our system to worry that we're not different enough, and that we're not experiencing DID in the same way as other people. And somebody spoke about functional multiplicity, and it reminded me, and also, that was a thing, and that's what's going on in our system, but also that functional multiplicity doesn't make me any less of a person, doesn't mean that I'm any less of a DID sufferer. DID is very different in each system, and just because we experience it in a very different way, we experience it very functionally, does not mean that we are invalid. And that's an important thing to remember. If you experience DID or any mental health disorder in any way that seems different from the norm, it doesn't make you any less valid, or that you definitely don't have that disorder. Just thought I would put that in there. It's something that I was watching it through, and I thought, I think I need to put this in there. So yeah, you're valid. If you have functional multiplicity, it doesn't mean you don't have DID. You don't have to be really suffering and struggling in order to have DID. But yes, I don't want to just bring people down. So I apologise for that. And sorry I didn't do much of a Halloween spooky video this year. Maybe next year. But we've just been very, very busy seeing family and friends and doing D&D and all this stuff. So thank you so much for watching. Please give it a like, because having some likes would be really awesome. And thank you so much for watching. I really hope you have an awesome day. I hope you at least found this a little bit interesting. Thank you so much for coming back and watching, and I will see you next time. Bye bye!